Alright. I don't know why I did a Matthew McConaughey impression. He has absolutely nothing to do with this. Christian Bale is going to play Gorr the God Butcher in the upcoming film Thor Love and Thunder, or Thor 4, or The4, because that's definitely how it's going to be stylized in at least one trailer. I will tell you right off the bat that I only ever read this one volume of Jason Aaron's Thor, and I didn't particularly care for it. The art's pretty fantastic, but I just didn't care for the story. But hey, it's been years since then, so maybe things have changed. Or things will change, and then I'll revert back to my old ways. Just like Thor in the MCU. Leave a like for the status quo. And before I get started, here's some plugs. So let me tell you about my 40-page comic anthology that is now available for $19.99. It's called DESTRUCTO Boy and Other Exciting Tales. It collects 3 short stories, a futuristic sci-fi romp, a post-apocalyptic time-traveling superhero suspense, and an epistolary tale, that means it's told through letters, of 2 vampire hunters. And if you're at all interested, check out the link tree in the description for where you can buy this bad boy. But get it now before it's too late, because this is a limited print run. I'm also currently working on a horror western graphic novel called A Dead Fish in the Grass. It'll be 166 pages, and I'm thinking of pulling an Ed Piscor, and by that I mean slowly posting the pages on my Patreon every week or every other week, I'm not entirely sure. And that way, if you're interested in the book, you can pay a certain amount each month for the story, and or you can buy the book once it's released. It's for the early adopters. Released in 2013, written by Jason Aaron with art by Asad Ribic. This is Thor, God of Thunder, Volume 1. The God Butcher. The book begins in 893 AD on the western coasts of Iceland. Norse men and women celebrate the defeat of some frost giants who had been tormenting them, and a young party animal frat boy, Thor Odinson, is loving it. Then a scream comes from outside, and a little girl runs to them, shouting that there's a devil in the waters. Thor and the others race down to the shore where they spot a body floating in the ocean. They pull the body to the beach, and Thor discovers a Native American god who's been beheaded? That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense geographically. Everyone starts freaking out, and Thor's like, I guarantee you, whatever has done this is no match for Asgardian steel. Then he tells everyone to return to the Longhouse and orders a funeral pyre to be constructed. Cut to the planet Indigar, present day. A tribe of Indigarians pray for an end to their drought. Then, it starts raining, and Thor appears before them. One of the little alien kids says thanks to Thor for listening to her prayers, and one of the older tribesmen offers Thor to stay with them and celebrate with cooked rockworm and cave slime ale. And Thor's like, I'm sorry, but I must... Did you say ale? So Thor gets drunk and recounts to them the tales of Asgard. The tribe elder later finds Thor and thanks him, and Thor asks why the child did not pray to her own gods, and the elder reveals to him that they have none. How exactly do gods work in the Marvel Universe? Are these gods actually gods? Are they just like super beings made by the Celestials who are somehow able to, I don't know, communicate with every race in existence if they need to? I don't think it's ever explained, but Thor is in disbelief as the elder tells him the ancient stories of the gods who once lived in a jeweled city in the clouds. So Thor flies away and, in orbit, he finds a large structure. He enters the gargantuan temple and orders the Skylords of Indigar to show themselves. But he gets no response. So Thor travels through the temple and finds a giant chain locking the door shut. He smashes the chain, opens the door, and finds the giant corpses of the Indigarian gods strung up like meat for a giant Rocky Balboa to practice his punches on. Thor walks around and discovers tens of hundreds or just a whole lot of gods. I'm not really sure how many. And he inspects each and every body and discovers that these gods were all slowly tortured to death. As he's doing this, that big old chain from earlier melts apart and forms together into some black goop, and something nearly strikes Thor. Then this big goop monster that looks like a lizard man with a stegosaurus head attacks. Thor deduces that this is some sort of guard left behind in the temple, which reminds him of something that happened a millennium ago. And Thor realizes that this was all done by Gorr, the God Butcher. Cut to the future. The armless and one-eyed King Thor sits upon his throne, listening to creatures shuffle outside of his chamber. Thor then puts on his destroyer arm, wields Mjolnir, and launches into battle against the black goop monsters. In the past, Thor tries to pick up Mjolnir from the weapons hall of Asgard, but he can't, so he leaves. Later he rides the ocean with a war party to pillage. Then the war party suddenly falls into a dense fog, and Thor orders them to stop their rowing. I smell God flesh. And 3 days later, as the Vikings prepare a battle, the Pegasus of Perun, Slavic god of sky, thunder, lightning, storms, rain, law, war, fertility, and oak trees, appears. Thor reins it in and flies it up into the heavens as his men begin their attack. In the dense storm clouds, he discovers the headless god Chernobog, and from the darkness of the storm, a black goop sword forms over a pale hand, and GORR, the God Butcher. What the fuck is he even supposed to be? He looks like a Dr. Seuss character got into BDSM. He looks absolutely ridiculous. This is the God Butcher? He looks like Voldemort got tribal tattoos and went skinny dipping. And don't even get me started on his nipples. Young Thor starts getting his shit kicked in by GORR the God Butcher's nipple scythes, and as GORR's about to kill him, Thor brings down the lightning and thunder. Thor crashes into the snow-covered earth, battered and bloodied. In the present, Thor arrives at Omnipotent City, looking for answers. Specifically a list of all the gods who have, I guess, gone missing or just haven't been seen in years. And the head librarian leads Thor to the gargantuan Hall of the Lost. Thor freaks out over how many gods are inactive, and the librarian's like, "Gods come and go. What do you want me to say?" Fucking hell. Thor's expressions in this book are just amazing and ridiculous. Look at this. He looks like Steppenwolf in the Snyder Cut with those big Furby eyes. So Thor travels around to various gods. He goes to the Oaken King and the Sequoia Queen, who haven't been seen in 2,000 years. He finds their corpses nailed to a tree, and is then attacked by a goop monster. Then he travels to the War Fairies, last seen 1,200 years ago. He finds a ruined world, and upon it, the corpses of the fairy gods. Then he's attacked by a goop monster. The Coral Immortals, dead. He's attacked by a goop monster. This thing that kind of looks like GORR, dead. Thor's attacked by a goop monster. Space gods, dead. Thor's attacked by a goop monster. And as he's doing this, he wonders why no other gods in the universe noticed or cared about this thousands of years long killing spree. He finds a god that he knew personally, Falagar the Behemoth, god of the galactic frontier, dead. The local worshippers tell Thor that Falagar has been dead for 5 years. Then he's attacked by a goop monster. Then Thor beheads the goop and shouts to the God Butcher to come fight him. In the past, Thor wakes up with one of his trademark weird faces and finds himself in a camp 7 days later. He gets some meat, mead, and his axe, and hours later he's traveling through the snow-flooded forest. Eventually, he comes across Hinken, Siberian god of the hunt. And what's with GORR and cutting off people's fucking leg? With his dying breath, Hinken tells Thor that the God Butcher is waiting for him in a nearby cave. Then he says that Thor should not have come alone. Cut to the present. Thor flies with Iron Man in his sweet black and gold armor. I love that armor, it just looks so good. And Tony's satellites have triangulated something Thor is searching for. The cave. Thor tells Tony to leave. Tony asks him what the hell happened to Thor in this cave to make him so afraid and solemn, and Thor tells him that he came to this place alone out of pride years ago, and that he never told anyone of what happened. Now, his silence is causing thousands of gods to die. Then he gives Tony the rundown and sends him off to Olympus to warn the gods of Earth what is to come. In the past, Thor enters the mouth of the cave. In the present, Thor hammers the now collapsed cave back open and enters. As he walks through the darkness, he contacts Freya and warns her that everyone in Asgardia are in danger. She asks who they are threatened by, and then Thor falls into a dark chasm. Young baby Thor enters the cave and calls out to the God Butcher.
God Butcher, come out of your hold and let's finish what we started.
You come alone. I knew you would. Gods are nothing if not predictable, especially when it comes to arrogance.
Thor lifts his axe aloft as the darkness itself attacks him. In the future, King Thor is overrun by shadowy black goop monsters. In the present, Thor discovers a creature within the cave. He captures it, and the creature begs Thor not to harm him, and explains that he isn't GORR. Thor asks why he's here, and the alien says that he's hiding from GORR, in the last place that GORR would ever think to look. Everything that GORR is doing now is because of what happened here in this cave, and it's all because of Thor. In the future, King Thor is hauled away by the goop monsters. They carry him through the ruins of Asgard and back into his temple and set him down upon his throne. And then they leave as Thor demands that they come back and kill him. In the present, the alien, Shadrik, explains that he has looked upon the God Butcher's face and survived. Shadrik was the last survivor of the Diamond Moons, and he had to watch on as the rest of his pantheon was butchered. But instead of killing him, GORR just cut off all of Shadrik's eyelids, forcing him to see everything. Thor demands to know where the God Butcher is now, and Shadrik tells him that GORR will find them soon enough. And then Shadrik tells him that something happened involving Kronix, or Kronux? I don't know. A word that Thor does not know, neither do I. The two then depart to Omnipotent City. They arrive and find the librarian bloodied and collapsed in the hallway. Then the goop monsters attack. In the past, Thor wakes up hanging upside down and chained up before GORR. God, he just looks so dumb. He's not even, intimidating. I mean, he is if you get a close-up of his face and you don't see the rest of him. Anyway, GORR demands Thor tell him about the gods of Earth and how to find them. Thor tells him to fuck off, so GORR turns his black goop chain into a spiky black goop chain and starts bleeding out Thor. In the present, Shadrik and Thor fight off the black goop monsters inside the now burning library. The Lord Librarian awakens, and Thor asks where the books involving Kronux are, and the librarian tells him that they're over there in that big fire, so Thor runs off. In the future, King Thor crawls out of his throne, down the steps of Asgard, and calls Mjolnir to him, and once again fights against the sea of monsters, as Thor is tortured, and Thor reads a burning script. Meanwhile, Librarian asks Shadrik if he's the Lord of Sprinklers to, stop his life's work from catching fire, and Shadrik informs him that he's the god of songs and somersaults. As the water pixies arrive, Thor leaves them behind to fly to Kronux, the Palace of Infinity. Cut to Kronux, the Palace of Infinity. GORR and his goop monsters slaughter the red-skinned Kronuxians and leak their blood into a massive pool. GORR then forces the last survivor to open a portal in the pool, and GORR slowly enters it. In the future, Thor is struck through the chest and again demands that they kill him and finish it already. Then a massive flash of light overtakes them all, and out of the light emerges Thor! Cut to 14 billion years ago, in the void. GORR arrives to find the first god looking down upon its creations.
As I stand here now, witnessing with my own eyes the first awkward fumblings of life in the void, I see no lonesome weeping god, no tears except those shed by the misshapen creatures around me, minutes old and already begging for death. I see no grand plan at work, no benevolent omnipotence on display. I see only an inbred offspring of the elder gods, treating primordial life as his fleshy plaything. For this young god, at least, there will be no temples erected. My name is GORR, son of a nameless father, outcast from a forgotten world. I have slain my way through the multitudes to stand here at the genesis of all things, blackened with vengeance, wet with holy blood. One simple dream still strong in my heart. The dream of a godless age.
Oh, how very edgy of you, GORR. God, he's like a high school student who just discovered atheism. Back in the present, GORR emerges from a temporal blood pool, having claimed the Elder God's heart. Then Thor appears and unleashes lightning on everyone in the room. Meanwhile, an 893 AD, Thor has been captive for 17 days, and GORR tells him that he will stop once Thor reveals the way to Asgard. Then a platoon of Viking berserkers appear. The leader declares that they've found their god, and tonight they will feast in Valhalla, and they begin their attack upon GORR. Thor demands that GORR face him as he plummets his way through the black goop monsters. And in the past, GORR proclaims that he isn't here to harm the humans, he's come to liberate them. The Berserkers don't care and continue to fight GORR and free Thor. In the present, GORR and Thor battle. Goddamn. In a cave, Thor is freed, equips his axe, and joins his followers in glorious battle. Thor dismembers GORR's right arm as he hoists his war axe through the air. In the present, GORR enters the time pool once again. While in the past, GORR declares that he will not die this day and erupts into an explosion of energy. Thor whips Mjolnir up into the air and flies down into the time pool. Thousands of years into the future, Thor arrives in Asgard and discovers himself. In the past, the remaining Vikings hail Thor and declare that songs will be sung of what has happened this day, but Thor tells them never to speak of what happened here. And in the future, the Thors battle the Legion of Black Berserkers, and the Horde begins dissolving. King Thor excitedly points this out, and Thor demands to know what happened to GORR since, Thor left shortly after he did. King Thor tells Thor that Thor appeared exactly where GORR did 900 years later. The blackness of the Berserkers then races into the cosmic heavens and rejoins GORR himself.
Another Thor. How splendid. One can never have too many of those. And just in time as well. I said I would save you for last, God of Thunder, and that day was imminent. The first day of a new age of freedom. The day all my dreams come true.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of What Is. I have absolutely no idea what happens to GORR or how this Thor run continues and ends because I never bothered finishing it. I felt that GORR was written interestingly enough, but his goals were, like I said, edgy and just not appealing. Speaking of unappealing, his appearance! He looks so ridiculous that I could never take him seriously. I remember when I first read this, I thought that GORR's weird little black berserker goop monsters would be like the worshippers of gods that he's killed and, claimed as his own, essentially making him a god. But I recently looked at the Marvel fan wiki page on the black berserkers, and it turns out that GORR used something called a necro sword. That was also used by Null, the Venom god or symbiote god or whatever the fuck. So I guess that's what it is. I don't care. Let me know what you thought of this book in the comments. And don't forget to check out my link tree in the description and follow me on Instagram at Smokey's Videos and at NotBlakeWild for updates on a dead fish in the grass. I'll see you next time. Bye.